Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of the People Progressing podcast. And I'm trying to get Clint on for a long time. He's a busy man and he's generously taking his time to come on with our podcast today. We have Clint Hurdle on, who's an ex-Major League player, ex-Major League manager, manager of the year, took the Rockies to the World Series. Just an amazing human being. And Clint, I always start this by just asking, like, where you grew up, what'd you like to do as a kid, some of the sports you played, any other extracurricular activities or anything like that that you did?
Well, I grew up in two different phases. Number one, I was born in Big Rapids, Michigan. My family lived there till I was five. My dad wanted a career change. He went from being in the service to coming home and working with a family uh, friend, actually a brother-in-law, and was in the private eye business. And somebody actually got shot, winged, and he decided that was close enough to home, and he was just going to get out of there. He went to Florida with no job and just mom and me. When I was five, we settled on the east coast of Florida, a small place called Merritt Island. I had two sisters, my mom and dad, family of three. We lived in a small town called Merritt Island. That basically was my upbringing. However, we went back to Michigan every summer for about a month. So part of Michigan never left me. I've grown up to this day. I'm a Lion, Tiger, Red Wing, and Piston fan. Um, and on Florida side, I mean, I grew up in a beach town, a fishing town, obviously the Space Coast. We have the Space Center outside, but I grew up in baggies, flip-flops, and a t-shirt when I wasn't playing ball. I played ball in high school all the way up. I mean, baseball, I played football, and I played basketball until my sophomore year, which was 10th grade. And I just didn't have time anymore. Love to fish, love to ride my bike, love to read. And for a living at that age, the way I made money, because we had no allowance, was I was basically a landscaper back before it was thought of to be a sought after job. I cut grass, I pulled weeds, I trimmed hedges, and I did that whenever I wasn't doing the other things just to have some spending money. But I graduated from Merritt Island High School in 1975 and then was drafted. And off I went to the wild world of professional baseball.
So, Clint, I have to ask you, being an ex-coach or former coach, I still do some coaching, but what was it? How important was it for you to be a multi-sport athlete?
When anybody asks me, and I seem to be getting asked more these days, I do a lot more work in amateur sports now than I ever did. And basically, I didn't have time. When you're a big league manager, I was there for 17 years. When I got off that, I mean, I'm still pulled and tugged
Yeah.
by the ball club, by the organization. And then time away was special and it was significant. But I do a lot of work now in amateur sports. And parents will ask me, and I will flat out tell them, I could not think anything better for your child to do than play multiple sports. To be a one trick pony at the age of 8 or 10 or 12 and one sport dominant, and the fact that sometimes it gets crazy enough where pitchers don't even hit at the age of 12 or 14,
Yeah.
I don't get it. I just think you develop different muscles. They are different games. There is connection, there is cohesion, there's community, there's teamwork. You're using different muscles, you're learning different rules. There's so much upside to playing multiple sports that I see that I just don't understand why more kids don't do it.
Well, and I know that you had a college football scholarship as well as a college baseball scholarship to play quarterback and play baseball at University of Florida, but you also could have gone to Harvard.
I was fortunate, as good as my dad was in coaching me up in sports, and I had some other coaches that were really, really gifted and talented as well. But the football thing was my dad's passion. And it's not why I played it, but it was a big reason why I got involved in it. And then the part of the sport I liked was Friday night.
Yeah.
I like games
Yeah.
and I like fans and I like the everything that came with a football game. But I was a quarterback. I was the guy jumping around on the outside of the huddle on the middle of the field when everybody's hitting each other and that big mosh thing's going on. I'm on the outside patting helmets and backs and I did have a dual scholarship at the University of Miami. I also had an opportunity to go to the University of Virginia, but I went to football schools. I went to Stanford, Arizona State, Georgia, FSU. Um, I went to Harvard for an academic scholarship that I was offered. My mother was always at the forefront of my studies, always telling me, son, there could be a time and place where your studies are going to be your best vehicle to further your career. You're pretty good in sports. She goes, matter of fact, you're really good. But if something happened, you got hurt and couldn't play, what would you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was what all she would always remind me of. So I I liked going to school. I liked learning. I liked reading, and I liked getting good grades. And I graduated second in my class, academic scholarship to Harvard. And one of the most unique things I found out early in life, kind of the conversation where the coach would say, "Hey, look, if grades get a little tough, don't worry. We'll get you a tutor, but you got to keep coming to practice." Okay. When I went up to Harvard, they knew I played sports, and they said I could play all the sports I wanted there. Anything that I was good enough to make their team, they shared with me, look, if the grades get hard, you don't go to practice. We'll get you a tutor and you'll get your grades where they need to be, and then you'll show up for the game.
Yeah.
Practice was, I mean, it was practice. And the games, if you can make them, great. But the grade point average, the going to school, the studying, an institution of higher learning like that stamped on my mind right away. They had their priorities lined up what was best suited for Harvard. And that was to grow people up and put them up in the workforce.
Yeah.
Whether it was government, whether it was law, whether it was medicine. And the other colleges was like, okay, we'll figure out a way for you to get on the field Friday or Saturday or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was kind of their focal point.
Now, you mentioned your mom and dad. It sounds like they were pretty inspirational in your life too, pretty influential. What did they give you, Clint? What did they give you moving forward into, you're competing in pro baseball and so forth?
Well, the one thing my mom and dad always made available was their time. My dad, at the age of 5, looked down at a young kid and said, "Hey, you want to go play catch?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Catch what?" And he said, "A baseball." It was the first sport I ever got attracted to. Or he took me in the backyard. We started playing catch. I started playing Little League. Actually, then you could play Little League at 6. You didn't have to wait till 8. So I started playing baseball at 6. But my dad was always available with his time. And he worked 2 second shifts sometimes, third shifts sometimes. What that means, he'd work night. He'd go in at 9 and come home at 6. When those days would happen, sometimes my mom would be out in the backyard playing catch with me. So they both made available their time. We got what we needed, not what we wanted. And that was a big family sit down conversation frequently. Do you need it? Or do you just want it?
Yeah.
And my dad had a trick that he played on me till I got to about 12th grade. It was, I'd say, "Hey, Dad, I want this." He'd go, "Oh, what do you want? What is it? Fishing tackle box? Oh, good. Well, I know you love the fish." He goes, "I'll tell you what, you keep looking at the papers or driving down to the store, ride your bike on down to the store and shop the best price. And then let me know like a week from now on what you found out." Joe, by the time a week went by, I forgot I even wanted a tackle box.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes. So they both helped us understand what we needed versus what we wanted. They were so available for my sisters growing up. They were cheerleaders. They played softball. They did sports. But my mom and dad probably ran themselves ragged, being at everything for everybody whenever they could, and really holding the family together. And the best part about this is I was home last weekend. My dad's 91. My mom's 89. I spent time with both of my sisters. We're still together as a family.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I used to tell people all the time when I was a teacher and a coach, I said I could always tell the kids that were a little bit more well adjusted because their parents spent time with them. And it was very apparent to me after teaching for so many years that was the case. Now I want to get into 17, 18 years old. You get drafted, you're number 1 pick by the Kansas City Royals. And all of a sudden you're out into that world, which is a totally different world than a college world, because I've been there. What was that like for you? What was the adjustment period like for you for that?
Well, it was hard. I come from a small town.
Yeah.
And I had structure all my life. It's the challenge that any kid faces when he leaves home.
Right.
College still provides structure. You got to go to class.
Yeah.
You don't have to, but you're encouraged to. Sometimes you have to. Grades are involved. But when you go to pro ball, you've got to figure your own schedule out. You've got to
Yeah.
become your own master of discipline. You've got to decide what's important. You got to learn how to prioritize. You got to find when you're going to eat, how you're going to eat, what you're going to eat. Take care of your own clothes, show up, still pay some bills that you might have. So it was a quick learning experience that took a long time to learn. Um, I did love the camaraderie. I love the fact of being on a team. First place I lived outside the dorm that we all were put into in spring training, I think in Waterloo, Iowa. Um, I think there was six of us that moved into a three-bedroom, two guys in each
Yeah.
room, and we didn't
Yeah.
even use. I mean, we had all mattresses on the floor. Nobody ever thought about box springs or
Yeah.
headboard or any of that. When we rented light. We had the bare essentials in there, but it was six guys just figuring it out. And you're in each other's way a lot.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out how to get along with people and how to talk with people and when to give people space. So there were so many different learning opportunities along the way. Some I picked up on better than others. The one thing that I share with people today is my father wrote me letters from the time I left home till I was in AAA of encouragement, one a week.
Wow.
And we would talk as often as we could, once a week, not a bunch, once a week. This is a payphone.
No, yeah,
You
I
got to
know.
go to a payphone. You got to put
Yeah.
your money in. You got to pay as you go, and just to catch up and stay connected. And those conversations were some of the most important things I did. I was fortunate I had a father I could talk to, or a mother I could talk to. I had some buddies that I was living with. They didn't have a dad they could talk with. They didn't have a
Yeah.
mother they could talk with. Um, so I was blessed. I learned the importance of, you know, keeping your family close and staying connected. And I also learned how much I took for granted when I was at home, when everything was being done for me versus when I had to go out on my own and figure out how to do some things independently.
And you're not getting paid very much.
Oh, no, 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 no. I got a bunch. In those days, you get the money thrown at you if you're a high enough draft. I was. But after that, no, we were joking the other day. I made $500 a month my
Yeah.
first year in pro ball.
I made
And
eight.
the next year I got a huge raise to $600
Yeah.
a month. But again, at that time, it wasn't about the money; it was about the dream.
Yeah. Well, I tell people all the time too, when we go on the road, we get $11 a day to eat. So I would go out and buy a box of cereal and bring a bowl and a spoon and buy a thing of milk when I got to the city we were at and
Right.
keep that on ice because they didn't have refrigerators back then in the motel rooms that we stayed in. And I'd use that for breakfast and then try to use the 11 for lunch and dinner somehow. You just learn.
You figure it
But
out.
yeah, it's pretty awesome. I would imagine, Clint, that was probably also maybe the first, maybe not the first time, but where you really had to experience some kind of failure. You were a great athlete growing up, probably not a lot of failures in that piece of it. But when you get to pro ball, it's a totally different deal. What was it like, with some of the failure part? I know the good parts are easy to get through, but what was it like experiencing some of that failure, being out on your own, being a young kid in Waterloo, Iowa, and all of a sudden maybe you don't go get a hit for the first, the 10 games in a row or 5 games in a row. What was that like for you?
I had never experienced failure before in
Yeah,
anything,
yeah,
really. I might have a game where I didn't get a hit. Excuse me. Those are few and far between. Um, in football, I was a quarterback.
yeah.
We threw the ball. I had success there. We audibled at the line. We had a hurry up offense before anybody ever heard of a hurry up offense.
Wow, that's cool.
Um, the first half of my first full season, I was hitting a buck 80 with 3 home runs and 19 RBIs. And along the way, I had made many phone calls home. And I went from, I'm tough, I'll get through it. It's okay, I got this, to it's too cold, I'm too far away. The bats aren't any good. The stadium's not any good. We don't have any fans.
Yeah,
Then I turned into, the master of an excuse. And it got to the point where I just got fed up with being bad. And I had a manager that was right there with me. And he just said, he basically told me, you need to figure something out. We drafted you because you could play. That kid has left. I don't know where that kid is, because the kid taking right field for me and hitting third right now looks like he's afraid to play, or he doesn't want to play, or he's just trying to figure out to play. You can play. When you find that other kid, shake his hand and bring him back to the ballpark. My dad said something to me many, many years ago about that time, and he put it very succinctly. He said, Clint, life's not fair. The only thing fair in life is a ball hit between first and third.
Yeah.
You need to figure out how to deal with adversity, because you're going to have it. And basically, what you have never realized is the game of baseball has a lot of failure in it. You just haven't had any yourself. It's what you do with the failure. It's what you do with the bad bounce. It's what you do with the pitcher that's better than you that particular night. How do you respond to adversity? How do you grow from adversity? What lessons do you learn along the way? And basically, how quick can you become? Can you recover from a bad couple games? Because the elite players in any sport, it's a bad game, and usually it's a bounce back. It's not 3 bad games in a row. It's not 0 for 25, it's 0 for 8.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they figure something out. So those life lessons along the way, it really got my attention that, okay, you're playing on a bigger arena, better talent. I mean, we got kids from Latin American countries coming in that got tremendous skill sets, don't even speak the language, and they're coming over here and finding ways to compete. Matter of fact, one of my best buddies was, my dad actually told me that too. He goes, your buddy Louie, he can't even speak English. You take him to the grocery store,
Yeah.
and he's out there playing. He said, all you got to do is go play. Louie's playing like his life depends on it. Maybe that's how you want to play.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's about purpose, right? I mean, we'll get into that here in a minute, but I have to believe that was a tough time, but then you make it up in to I don't know if this is the right word or whatever, but you were like the next phenom coming up for the Kansas City Royals. And I wanted to ask you about that. That the expectations that were put on you as a coach, somebody that coached for over 30 years, I dealt with a lot of players, and now in business, I deal with a lot of people in business when I go out and speak and stuff. When you put expectations on them, it paralyzes them. What was it like for you to have those kind of expectations on you to be the next guy? You were the cover guy on Sports
Yeah.
Illustrated and all those things. Those expectations were gigantic for you. What was that like?
Well, they were, um, and I think some people work through expectations much simpler than I did.
Yeah,
Patrick Mahomes doesn't seem to have much problem with expectations.
yeah,
Now, Tom Brady can tell you a whole different story about expectations. And then look how, Tom ended up and how Patrick's trying to get there. But for me, it was the first time I realized how good people thought I was.
okay,
I just knew I could play, and I just went and played. And usually I was the best player, but there was no press, there's no hype, there's no sensationalism. When you get the cover of Sports Illustrated proclaims you as the next phenom, this year's phenom. I didn't realize how much that was, but you got people in your own locker room that have been playing 10, 12 years that never been on the cover of a magazine. You got players now within the league looking at this hot shot rookie, and they think the rookie thinks he's a hot shot because he's on the cover, which the rookie probably was scared that he was on the cover and what kind of repercussions were going to come from that. It was a whole nother level of growth I had to go through. In today's game, we send our kids off that are drafted. We onboard them for sometimes a week or 2 weeks in a program in rookie league. We send them to a master class over the winter before the draft, all the high draft picks that are anticipated, to go through a master class with the media, with public speaking, with branding, social media. And back in the days when I came up, that just wasn't available because a lot of it wasn't there. So I don't think anybody meant me ill will. I just think it went the way it went. And then a lot of expectations were hard. It was hard to live up to all the expectations because I'm also a people pleaser. So I wanted to make everybody in the stadium happy. I wanted everybody to like me. And I think everybody that has those feelings figures out at some point in time, that's the quickest way to make everybody not like you and make everybody
yeah,
not
yeah,
happy with you.
yeah,
And when your game doesn't go well, it's more than bad. It's almost like, oh my gosh, I failed. I became the failure, which I learned down the road. I was never the failure. The event was a failure. I had a bad game. I'm a good player that needs to come back, bounce back from a setback, but I wouldn't be at that level if I was a failure. I had enough success to get to that level.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to compartmentalize a lot differently. Um, in retrospect, a lot of hard that I went through early really prepared me to be the kind of manager I think I was able to become,
Mm-hmm.
because there wasn't many things that could come through my players and into my office that they could talk about that I hadn't already walked through. And I did learn something very significant with expectations, but I learned it in AA when I was getting sober.
Okay.
Is like you said, expectations more often than not become resentments.
Yeah.
And I learned in Pittsburgh, I didn't do this in Colorado, but I tried something different in Pittsburgh. In my messaging, something came up where I had a buddy just say, hey, if they're not hearing your message, you're not asking the right questions. And at the end of it, ask them what they heard.
Right.
Don't let them leave until they give you some feedback of the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, that took me to another level where the first player I brought in for a clubhouse conversation in Pittsburgh was Starling Marte, very gifted outfielder,
Mm-hmm.
five-tool player, and he was going to play beside McCutchen. And how was he going to feel? And I talked to him. I said, what do you think my expectations for you are this year, Starling? And he looked at me and he said, well, 40 stolen bases, 20 home runs. I hit 300. I win a gold glove. And all these numbers just kept piling out of his mouth. And I'm thinking, oh my Lord, this is real. This kid feels like he's got to do all that to make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And when he finished, I go, are you finished? He goes, yes. I go, Starling, you do that, you'll be the MVP of the league. And he said, you don't want that. I go, Starling, here's what I want. I want you to be the best teammate you can be. I want you to be the best father you can be when you're at home. I want you to be the best dad you can be with your kids. When you put on that uniform, it's time to go with your boys. And when we get on that field, it's time to beat somebody and for you to show your skill sets within the structure of the game, doing what the game demands you to do. Run bases hard, play that defense you can play, be the hitter that you can be in the box. But the numbers, Starling, if you do those other things, the numbers will take care of themselves. As I continue to do that, Joe, with every player on the team that year, it's 2013 in Pittsburgh, almost 90% of those players gave me feedback of what they thought I was going to make me happy, and all of it was statistically motivated.
Yeah. Yeah. How did I got to go back. I got to go back to you mentioned AA because I was it the stress of the Phenom title and all of that stuff. Was that what really kind of led to the alcohol problem, Clint? Was that, because I get it. I mean, that the stress that you had to be under had to be just huge with what people outside of your control were saying and putting on you. How did you handle that?
Well, I didn't handle it very well. Eventually, I drank myself in alcoholism. I numbed my pain. I numbed my anxiety. I numbed my fears. I numbed my embarrassment. At the end of the day, I'll look back at some of my numbers when I thought I was horrible. They were average.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but being average for the first time in my life wasn't good enough. It wasn't acceptable. Um, and then I got to the point because of my drinking that it was hard just to be average.
Yeah.
But I don't use that as an excuse. I use that was my defense mechanism. If I didn't have a good game on the field, I was going to have a good game off the field. And then, then I was a big boy after the game. And it just got me to a very lonely place over a period of time. I didn't become an alcoholic overnight. I mean, I didn't start drinking until basically I couldn't even drink when I got to the big leagues because I was 20 years old. I drank a little bit in the minor leagues, but I was always focused and determined. And I never played badly enough to have to numb anything. But up in the big leagues, probably at the age of 21 is when I started drinking heavily. And by the time I was probably about 25, I got to a bad spot with alcohol. I didn't get drunk every night, but anytime I started to drink, I got drunk by the end of the night.
Yeah.
And it just progressed, worse as it went on. And it wasn't until around the age of 40 that through a bunch of sequence of events and a couple of people in my life that I realized I was sick and tired of feeling tired and sick, and there had to be more in life than what I was experiencing. And I needed to find a way to get out of my own way. and let's see just what would happen if I rededicated my life to Christ and I got sober. Just see what would happen then. And those are the first two steps I took.
Wow, what a great story. Inspirational story right there. How hard was it? How hard was it to make that change? I mean, it's hard. It's hard for people. Doesn't matter if you're sports, business, whatever, to all of a sudden you came up to a decision. I'm going to accept Christ and I'm going to quit drinking. How hard was that, Clint? How hard was that to go full force into that? Or maybe you didn't go full force. It was a building process. Just give people an idea of how you did that.
Yeah.
So we have an idea.
Mine, first of all, I rededicated my life to Christ at the age of
Okay.
40. I accepted Christ at 17, but unfortunately, I used Jesus as an ATM card for 23 years.
Yeah. Wow.
And I
That's
don't say
awesome.
that tongue in cheek. I share that because I think people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And that was during all my time in the big leagues, minor leagues. I mean, I was a Christian, and there was days when I was in the Bible, and there's days I wasn't. There's days I was in the street. There's days I wasn't drinking. There's days I was drinking. But when it got to the point, look, there's enough signs. At the age of 40 something, I'd also been divorced twice. I was an alcoholic, and I wouldn't say it. So is that all there is in this life? I was still coaching in the big leagues. I had gotten up to become a major league coach. I was still doing some things functionality wise that were good enough for people to think I was worthy of something, but I knew inside I wasn't happy. And one of the turning points was going through another failed marriage, two of them. You hurt people. There's collateral damage. My oldest daughter, Ashley, was involved in that. But I wanted a better life, and I wanted to be the best version of myself. So one of the first steps, rededicate my life to Christ. The second was to get sober. I had known it, but I hadn't said it. And through a sequence of events, I had to do alcohol counseling. I started going to AA meetings. I ran into a woman who called me on all my BS over the years of why I needed to drink and how I needed to drink. And actually, Karla played a pivotal role, my wife now. I've been sober 26 years. I've been married 25, Joe.
You're amazing.
You do the man math, it kind of, okay.
Yeah.
How hard was that to figure out? Well, it was hard for me to figure out.
Yeah.
But she said something at a pivotal point in time in our relationship, because we dated for 6 years. I was afraid to get married again.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't hold up my end of the bargain. And I've got all the guts I had to put together, and I asked her to marry me. And Karla looked at me and said, that's an interesting question. I said, that's not the answer I've grown accustomed to. And she said, well, she goes, Clint, I've been around you for 6 years, and there's a guy I love. But I'm going to tell you honestly, the guy doesn't come out enough. I don't know when he's going to come out. I don't know how long he's going to stay around. I'm kind of at the point now where I want to see what's next. So until you find a way to make yourself happy, Clint, you will never make me happy. And I'm not as happy as I should be in this relationship. And neither are you. So you figure it out. And it wasn't for the first time in my life, I didn't think I had to fix this overnight. I knew it was going to take time. So I made the two decisions I made. I just started living a different lifestyle. I started hanging with different people. I went through my buddies calling me names and, oh my gosh, you found this and now you're this. And truthfully, I found out that people that I'd been drinking with, they didn't really care whether I was drinking with them or not.
Yeah.
Once I left, they'd find somebody else to drink with.
Yeah.
They weren't after my best interests.
Right.
And I found a new group of people that actually kind of thought Clint had a chance. And actually AA is still a big part of my life. My faith is a big part of my life, but it took me 2 years of work before I felt mature enough and in the best place I'd ever been in my life to go back to Karla and ask her to marry me again. And 2 years later, she said yes. And that, we have dreams and we have vision. So if I could write what's happened to me in the last 25 years since I got sober and I rededicated my life, I couldn't write the story that's happened. The story that has happened has been amazing, magnificent. I would have not had probably half the great details in it that I've been blessed with, but most of it came from just getting out of my own way and realizing that God's got a purpose for me here in this life, and it's to serve. It's not to be served, pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's to help grow boys into men because I did it one time and then I lost that and I found it again. And truthfully, to try and be a mentor for those that need it, or a friend to those that need it, or just a GPS on the side for somebody who needs it. That's been the story of my life the last 25 years.
It's amazing. I want to say this. I listen to Ed Milet's podcast a lot, and he always says that when you're feeling helpless, you help others. I want to get into that now in your life where you're at now. When you decided to make that change, how much did you get excited? How rewarding was it that you could use your past experiences to help and guide and inspire other people with your story? Because you're amazing at doing that. But it takes a special person to be able to be vulnerable, to be able to do that. What was that like for you, and what does that give you?
Well, it gives me experience, strength, and hope. Experience, I know what I've been through. I know where I am at now, and I actually know where I'm going. And I have for a while now, the first time in my life. I also learned along the way that God's continued to put men in my life and women in my life, just as importantly,
Yeah.
that have helped shape and mold me and helped me continue to understand what it means to be the best version of me. As I've gone through these life experiences and I've learned things, I learned also to sit back and not force issues with people, let people come to you. Usually I can tell by a look in an eye if somebody's hurting, a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, because I had that look for many, many years.
Yeah.
Body language, I can read body language now. I never paid attention to body language. I only listen to what people talked about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I don't listen as much to really what people say. I watch what they do
Wow.
and what actions they take. And I've been beaten down. I've had nothing. I had to move back in with my folks at the age of 30, which is not a career move that I'd advocate for a lot of people. I was fortunate enough they took me in.
Yeah.
But then I look at the value in serving the best version of yourself through, one of the things I loved about baseball was there's a chain of command. I love from a player's aspect, it's community. It's sharing the successes of others. It's called mudita. It's a Buddhist term. It's celebrating success of others. In baseball, 9 innings, 9 players, whoever plays, who can help, how can they help? Because some days you're the guy that goes 0 for 4, punches out 3 times, and doesn't get a ball hit to you in the field.
Yeah.
And if your team wins, you should be happy.
Yeah.
I wasn't always that guy, but now I learned along the way that I can be 0 for 4 with 3 punches. And if our starting pitcher shoved for 5, the relievers were locked down out of the bullpen, and my 2 buddies got big hits, woo, we all had a big night.
Yeah. And
I also learned
you live in so much more joy.
So much more joy. And I also learned that if I was the guy that hit 2 homers and drove in 5 and we lost 11-6, it's good.
Yeah.
But it's tempered.
Yeah.
It's tempered because we lost as a team. That was our goal, to go out and win a game. As I turned that into coaching, I found out that I could be as good a couch as I could a coach. Sometimes it's asking a player one good question.
Yeah.
And then they don't stop. Sometimes I would get players in the cage as a hitting coach. We didn't even hit.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a manager, to be a guy that now you're helping coordinate a lot of different pieces to the game plan or parts of the game plan. And you're working with 25 players who have hearts and come from homes and represent things. Then it just becomes a huge tapestry that I just couldn't get enough of.
Yeah.
And to be a small part of that, and a few different places. In 2007, the World Series in Colorado. In 2010, a World Series with Texas as a hitting coach. And in 2013 to 15, 3 consecutive winning seasons in Pittsburgh after 20 consecutive losing seasons. I've got to see people experience joy together that is uncommon, that is unconditional, that is reverential. And I'll always be thankful for those opportunities. They've been some of the best gifts I've gotten in sport. And then at the end of the day, the thing that you hold on to the most through it all is the relationships that are built and developed. Yeah. I still have people from all 3 places that I stay in contact with. I'm not talking Christmas card once a year. We stay in contact with
Yeah.
each other. We do life together, and that's what makes everything much more meaningful.
A lot to unpack. I just want you to know my word last year was mudita too. Um,
Wow.
and I go when I speak to organizations, businesses, teams, I say this. I was very fortunate to be part of 5 state championship teams as a coach. Three as a defensive coordinator for football, and two as a baseball coach. And I tell them, people ask me all the time, what was the differentiator there? I said, well, we had good players. We had really good players. But I said the number one differentiator was always in those 5 teams was this. Those players really were happy for each other's successes. And it's so hard to achieve that in a me world now. But somehow we built that culture, we achieved that culture. And if I had 2 players that were vying for the shortstop job, the one who wasn't playing that day wasn't wanting the one out there to fail. They were happy that one failed, and then they were ready when they were ready to play. And so that's why I adopted that word last year, because I want to be happy for other people's successes as well. And that's where I'm at in my life. And that's what I want to do. That's where I've been in my life for a long time. It's a powerful word. It's a very powerful word. And if people use that in life, with families, with business, with athletics, the joy that they get from that is amazing. And to experience a championship or experience success with a group of people that you're happy that they're having success is just it's hard to describe to people. They don't get it. A lot of people don't get that, and it kind of makes me sad now.
Well, sometimes you can't describe it, but you know what it is when you see it.
Yeah,
And I played on teams that didn't have it.
yeah,
I coached a couple teams that didn't have it, and I actually managed a few teams that didn't have it.
yeah,
And you can't force it. It goes back to something else I learned. Some of my best lessons came out of AA, that I can't control what other people say, think, or do.
yeah,
I tried to do all three of those for a long time.
yeah.
I
We
can't
all do,
control what
yeah.
other people say, think, or do. But I also can't make somebody hire me, love me, or call me.
No
you
doubt.
know and when you're on a team where you want to call your buddy in the off season, where you want to call a coach in the off season, or you want to reach out and share something good that happened at the house, those are the special times, because a lot of times, you when you catch up, all these things happen, you go, wow, he never shared that with me. I wonder, well, you know why? You're not a big part of his life.
Yeah, yeah,
And that happens to us a lot, because we find our little isolated spaces, our little isolated cubicles, where we just, you take care. We've got an iPhone, an iPad, we got iTunes. At the end of the day, I pay. I pay because I don't build relationships. I pay because I'm isolated. I pay because I'm not out in the sunshine. I pay a lot of different ways when I just become what I've shared before. The smallest package in the world is a man wrapped up in himself. And I've been that guy.
well, Clint, I want to talk a little bit leadership here. And you're manager of a big league team. It's like a CEO. I mean, let's face it, you're a CEO of a group of guys, a group of players and other support staff and all that stuff. And you talk about you want to have relationships with your players. How lost is that in today's leadership world? When I work with CEOs now, I work with teams, I work with all those people now. I don't feel like that's always at the forefront of leadership. How important is that for you?
It's very important, but I don't think it's different in sport as in an industry. There's people that don't do it because it's hard.
Yeah,
There's people that don't do it because they'll say, well, I'm not a people person. Well, then hire some people that are.
yeah,
There's a lot of reasons to say why teams don't have success, but the number one common denominator, why businesses, people don't feel valued. And people want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to have a seat at the table. In the relationships I tried to build with the Rockies, there's a chain of command. I needed to honor it. There's an owner, there's a team president, there's a GM. I've got to be able to manage up and be a part of that, and they manage down. Then I've got to work down to the players. I got to be a conduit between level 4, C level people and the clubhouse, and to make sure the messages have clarity. that we do communicate, that we do have cohesion. And then every once in a while, we need to have some confrontation, because confrontation can be healthy. It's just exchanging ideas or beliefs. It's only when one person actually kind of is stubborn that confrontation becomes a roadblock or a bulldozing effect or something like that. I've shared for years that, if you, to get confrontation, you got to get some traction. The idea that people lose when it comes to traction is, to get traction, you got to get friction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And friction can be healthy. What better time? Some of the best times I've had with my coaches, when we're cutting something up and we don't all see it alike, but after about 30 minutes, we land on something. So what's the goal? Where do we want to end up, and how we get there together is more important than who was right, who was wrong. Let's get it right. And it's happened in baseball with this old school versus new school mentality. My encouragement early on just came, let's be in school.
Yeah.
If you want to stay in the game, you got to stay in school. I've got a lot of buddies my age that are mad. They've been out of the game 5 years, but they can't get back in because they're stubborn.
Yeah.
They're bullheaded. They didn't want to learn anything new. Not everything new has value either. That was what I share with some of the younger people. Just because it's new and shiny doesn't mean it's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were able in Pittsburgh to kind of take a hybrid policy, that we needed analytics, but we needed human analytics. We needed to not remove the heartbeat from the equation and know that we're dealing with human beings. There's so many statistical advantages that come for teams now. Everybody's got the same info. Now, the teams that win the most are the teams that can take the information, in small bites, give it to coaches so they can understand it, so they can share it with players. It's a filtering effect. A lot of teams just vomit information on you. And then you got to try and figure out what's good or what's bad, or how much or is not enough. But it goes back to a relationship, working hand in hand together, and knowing at the end of the game, we all won or we all lost.
Yeah. I always ask my leaders that I work with, are you a people leader or a data leader? And, the data is going to come, but who gives you the data? The people. Whether it's the person giving you the analytics, that's a person. So you got to have a good relationship with them. You got to value them. And then people that are using that data, the players, if we can help them with the data that we're trying to give them with the analytics, how are we treating them as people? We're treating them as people and valuing them. And like you said, valuing the people up, people below. God values everyone. And it's how do you gain that trust and respect, Clint? You talked about you and your coaches might sit down and disagree on some things, but in the end, you always came out respecting each other and trusting each other that we had the right thing. How do you gain that trust and respect out of those people?
Well, one of the beautiful parts of that is it takes time. Again, it's hard.
No
and
doubt.
You got to find time. And it's not in an email. It's not in a text. It's not in a Zoom call. That's part of it. But you and I having lunch together is much more meaningful than you and I doing the Zoom together. It would be.
No doubt.
This is what we got right now. We're going to learn from each other.
Yeah.
We're going to have a good time. But lunch, not only are we going to eat, and I know we both like to eat, but we can see each other. That's real FaceTime. There's always been 3 questions for me that need to be answered. An employee-employer relationship, teammate to teammate. Can I trust you? Do you care about me? And can you make me better? The sooner we can get those 3 questions answered and eliminate distractions, it gives players freedom to play, coaches freedom to coach, whatever business you're in, sales, tickets, whatever. It gives them freedom to go do things. There's nothing harder in life to do a job while you're looking over your shoulder, or you're looking up at the people that are making decisions on your job while you're trying to do your job.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to share with my coaches that if you get in a situation, in a coaching moment presents itself, never tell the player, wait, I got to check with Clint. You've lost him, number one. Number two, it makes me look like I'm the Wizard of Oz. Yeah. Nothing's going to happen without my blessing. And number 3, they're going to think, really? I just, how does this work? Make your best decision at the time. Inform me after. I'll say, I like that. That was a good read. Or, hey, I get it. Maybe get back to them. If it doesn't go the way we want to with this idea, here's one you can add on to it. Never told them that was a stupid idea. Never told them that was the wrong thing. I wouldn't have done that. They've got to know they have freedom to coach and you've got their back. The other thing I used to do, one of the best exercises, Joe, I ever did, it was called a 3 up, 3 down with each one of my coaches. And I shared this in Pittsburgh my first year in, told my coaches when the season started, 6 weeks from today, I'm going to have you in either my office or lunch or somewhere, an offsite. One at a time, you're going to tell me 3 things I've done well the last 6 weeks and 3 things I haven't done well.
Wow.
Oh, it blew their mind. They were scared to death because coming up with 3 things the manager did well. Oh, come on. We can Eddie Haskell that.
Yeah.
Remember Eddie Haskell on Leave It?
Yeah, oh,
Hello,
yeah.
Mrs. Cleaver. What a wonderful dress you're wearing. Oh, Clint, you did such a nice job with that double switch in the 6th inning. And oh my gosh, the line. But to tell your boss 3 things you didn't do well during the 6-week period, they all freaked out. Matter of fact, to the point where some of them had 3, they didn't have 3 on the other end. I said, nope, we're going to sit here till you come up with 3.
That's awesome.
And what it went from was men coming in my office, and some of them I had to get them out of my office because they couldn't do it in the office. Uncomfortable because all they saw was a title. Over time, Joe, we tore down the wall and we built a bridge that was just Ray, and Clint. Yeah. It was Jeff and Clint. It wasn't the bench coach versus the manager. It wasn't the pitching coach versus the manager. The titles were erased. It was 2 grown men that got some experience in baseball, sharing, and them telling me what they valued that I thought I did well, and some things, wow, why did you do that? That didn't resonate with me. And I never, ever gave an excuse. I just took notes. I never ever said, oh, you're wrong. You didn't see that right. I just listened to them because over time, they were telling me what they valued. They were telling me the kind of learners they were, what they were attracted to, what was important to them. So now I knew who to go to for what. You know, if it's a mechanical issue, I know this coach is better with mechanics. If it's a video, this is my video guy, right? He can take him in there and work magic. If it was a touch and feel guy, okay, we work on the field or in the cage. It just helped. I do it at home. I finally got the guts. I started doing it with my kids and my wife. It was amazing the truths they would tell me. Yeah. Because we can't see ourselves. Right. We don't see how we navigate our day at home when we're home, because sometimes I wasn't home when I was home. Right. And one of the big sayings that actually came out from that was be where your feet are. Yeah. Be where your feet are. It's amazing. The vulnerability that you're showing there as a leader, I think vulnerability is one of my top leadership things that people have to have, that they need to be vulnerable. They need to be okay to say, I screwed up. They need to be able to do that. You know, and I used to call it, I call it CPC. As leaders, what we try to do is we try to coach it, and then we try to help them practice it. And then the last C is this. The last C, which I think is the one that's missing by most leaders, is how do we challenge it? How do we put you in a challenging situation? My purpose in life is to inspire people to keep learning, growing, and progressing so they can be their best when their best is needed. The old John Wooden part. Well, if I don't challenge what I'm trying to do with my people when I'm leading them, how are they ever going to fail and grow and do those things? And if I don't challenge them, I'm telling them I don't believe that they can do it. So how did you challenge your people that you were leading? Well, I wait for opportunities to present themselves and ask them what they thought. And then sometimes I'd empower them by, I would actually do what they thought. And if it didn't work out, I didn't blow them up. I got to take the hit after the game, you know, if it's baseball related in industry. One of the other good exercises I use, because, you know, whether you realize it or not, every one of your coaches is second guessing the things you do. Yeah. Yeah. Not in a bad way, but they're watching you maneuver. They're watching you navigate. Right. I would have done that. That was a good idea. Hey, I never thought of that. Oh, I can't believe he's doing that. This is not going to end well. I would just, some days they would walk in the office and there'd be lineup cards in everybody's chair. First time I did it, they came in like, what are these for? I go, fill it out. Yeah. Yeah. And I can remember I'm not the manager. I'm not filling. Yeah. I go, well, you're going to fill one out today if you want to get out on the field and coach. Yeah. I need your help. And that's usually the trick phrase that made it all happen. I need your help. I'm a little stuck on the lineup. My eyes got calluses on them. I've been looking at everything. I want some fresh thoughts. Oh, okay. And it was amazing the ideas they would come up with, the way they would pattern their people or move people around or whatever. And then when you take one of those lineups and you put it in a game and we win, and then after the game you say, hey, you know what's kind of crazy is I threw out some lineups the other day, and Joey Cora, my third base coach, came up with A, B, and C, and we did it. And man, thank God we got Joey on the team. Now, the same time it could have happened where I took an idea and it just bottomed. And, they would say, what happened? I said, well, it's on me. I'm the one that makes out the lineup. I didn't say somebody, it was somebody else's thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right then, when you empower them in the press, they see, oh my God, he sees me, he heard me. And then when they come up with the idea and they see the idea not work and they feel like what's going to happen, nothing happens.
Yeah.
Because then I'd go in and tell them after the game, dude, I chose to use it. We found out maybe that wasn't our best option, but we all learned something together. And I think the biggest thing you learn is I trust you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to depend upon you. Nobody's going to bat 1,000. Nobody's going to get every decision right. For me to think that I have to make every decision correctly when I've got 8 coaches on my staff that are all brilliant in the basics in their own particular area, to not rely upon that, I'm nuts.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful stuff. I knew we would get into some good leadership stuff. I have to ask you, Clint, how your daughter, Madison, I know you have 3 kids, but your daughter Madison's special. She's an amazing human being. Why don't you give us a little background on her and the Prader Willi syndrome and what you do for that?
Well, I usually start off by anybody that's had kids. When your wife's pregnant and people ask you, what do you want? The catchphrase is, we don't care as long as it's healthy.
Yeah. Right.
Well, we were one of the families that had a baby that wasn't as
Right.
healthy
Yeah.
as a baby should be, or you expect it to be. Basically, we got a gift from God and just didn't realize it for a while.
Yeah.
Maddie was born with a birth defect. It's a deletion of the 15th chromosome. That chromosome is your satiation chromosome, which lets you know when you're hungry or when you're full. The chromosome in a Prader Willi baby it's blown up at conception. They have no satiation chromosome, so they are hungry every breath of their life. They wake up hungry, they go to bed hungry, everything they do, whether they eat or not. And that's why structure, stability, counting calories, so many things come into play in the life cycle of this child as they're growing up, so they don't get obese. They don't wear themselves out with worry about food security, or they're left to run free and eat, and they get so big they can't even maneuver. We found out early that Maddie's stability on ground wasn't very good. She didn't walk till she was 19 months. She didn't even try and run till she was 4 years old. But we tried something different. We put her in water when she was like 3 months old.
Wow.
Maddie's still swimming today at 22 in the
That's
Special
so
Olympics.
awesome.
The buoyancy of the water gave her freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fine motor skills are affected. Gross motor skills still are affected. Her IQ tops out at 75. Maddie's now 22. Most of her's 12. However, she works 3 days a week at a dog supply store on the island. She goes to spin class 3 days a week.
Oh, good.
She dances on Thursday night. In Maddie's world, she's alive, and I mean vibrant. She has purpose. She loves dogs more than people. And most people will say, well, a lot of, Maddie loves dogs more than people.
Yeah.
Maddie knows everybody's dog on this island. Maddie knows what every kind of dog is. It's like she's a dog whisperer. It's her secret spot.
Yeah.
She loves music. She's been to 2 Taylor Swift concerts and dressed up to the nines to go to them. Maddie's doing her thing. But for her to do her thing, she had to get up and get moving. And I think she realized that. She just wasn't going to settle. Christian wanted to do his thing. Can you imagine what it's like to be the son of a major league manager and tell your dad at the age of 4 that you're retiring from baseball?
Yeah.
Because you don't have any interest in it. And to this day, he says one of the greatest freedoms we ever gave him was the freedom to go discover what he liked to do.
Well, that's awesome.
And we didn't try and stick him in any kind of put a round peg in a square hole. He went from karate to tennis to crew. He learned teamwork in crew.
Wow, that's awesome.
He also picked 3 sports, which neutered me as a parent, Joe, because I never could overcoach my kid. I didn't
Yeah.
know enough about karate, tennis, or crew, and I couldn't even second guess his coach, which is open season for every parent to second guess the coach.
Yeah.
So he had me right where he wanted him. I learned so much about being Christian's father, not Christian's coach or manager. And then Ashley's 39, been married 3 years. I'm so proud of this girl, her growth, her development. She's happily married. I love her husband. My son, our son-in-law, fantastic man that is kind, that cares for her, that treats her with respect. But all three of my kids had to develop in their own way. They all had to create environments that they thought they felt comfortable and safe in. And each one of our children, at least in my case, I believe God put each one of those children in my life as well as Carla's to help us grow in the areas we needed to grow
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And with Maddie, the biggest challenge though, is because there's things Maddie, will never do. Maddie will never drive a car. Maddie will never have her own kids. Maddie never got asked on a date. Maddie never got taken to prom.
Yeah. It's tough.
We have found some ways to recreate some of those things. We have a big fundraiser every year here in Bradenton, the Clint Hurdle Hot Stove fundraiser for Prader Willi Syndrome. It's like prom night for Maddie, one time a year.
Yeah.
She is the focal point. She is on stage, not on stage, but she's the one that we fawn over. And along, we bring some other Prader Willi kids in that are young adults now and some of the younger kids that are just teenagers. But we have a big night for these kids to celebrate them because God doesn't make any junk and he puts people in our lives to grow us in ways we couldn't grow on our own. And that's the other thing Maddie's done for Karla and I, as I truly believe, which has been a help in my third marriage. I would love to tell you that I had it all figured out the third time I got married, but Maddie and her existence and what she needs and what she can do and can't do, it's helped Karla and I get to places in our relationship I'm not so sure we would have gotten to on our own.
Yeah. That's something.
So we're blessed with three children that have all found things they love doing, that they're passionate about, and we can watch them on their journey, celebrate the successes, hug them when they fail, but we let our kids fall down.
Yes.
We don't try and catch our kids every time we let our kids fail and fall down, and then they learn how to recover and they learn how to recalibrate or rebuild and bounce back.
Hey, guess what? That doesn't make you a bad parent that you let them, that they fall.
I think it makes you a good parent.
Yeah, me too. It's very powerful words there. Now, Clint, you've written a book. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your book real quick, and then I have three questions at the end, and we'll finish her up because we're getting out of time here.
Yeah, the book, it happened organically. And Joe, I really think that the best things in life happen organically. We talked about it earlier. I can't control what other people say, think, and do. And I can't make people call me, love me, or hire me. I had been asked to write a book for years, actually in Colorado after the World Series had started. And I continued to say no to probably about 18 people from that time until the 3 years in Pittsburgh we had where I was in 2 World Series, helped have some success in a place in Colorado nobody else ever had before. Mm-hmm. Had some success in Pittsburgh where nobody had some success in a long time. And people were coming up to me that had written books, and they were good ideas and good people. But I never wanted to write a book while I was managing. And then when a friend of mine, Dave Burchett, who was the TV production manager for the Rangers games for 40 years, actually kept asking me, very persistent. And when I got out of the game, for the 2 years I had retired, he said, "Hey, how about if we co-author a book?" I said, "Well, tell me more about that." So he developed this idea that 2 older, experienced guys were going to share some failures, some life lessons learned, some successes had, and some benefits of what teamwork, just the story of our lives, but intertwined. And there was some tremendous content in it. But at the end of the day, we worked 2.5 years on this book, and we went to publishers, and everybody turned us down because basically we were told 2 old white guys sitting on a porch sharing experience, strength, and hope. It's a very small demographic. It's not going to sell a lot of books. And that hurt our feelings. It didn't hurt our feelings at first. Then we got mad. We'll find somebody. All we need is one publisher. And then it got where we got sad. I mean, we got mad, sad, all of it. And Dave finally looked at me before we were going to self-publish the book. So we went from writing a book and we're going to donate all the money to, okay, we're going to have to pay to get the book out there. And then hopefully we'll make some money to donate the money back and make our money back. Dave said, "Hey, ask your buddy John Gordon to read the book." John's a very good friend of mine. If you know John, or if you don't know John, he's written 17
Oh
bestsellers.
yeah, I've read them all. He's one of the reasons I do what I do.
Well, he and I go back 15 years. I brought him to Colorado. He spoke to our teams there, spoke to our teams in Pittsburgh. But we're very good friends. And John read the book. He goes, "Clint, there's some really good stuff in here." He said, "The co-authoring thing." Now he goes, "What you need to do, I've known you long enough, you need to write a book."
Yeah,
And I was like, "John, no, I don't want." I gave him 12 reasons why I should not write a book. And he goes, "You're afraid." And then I gave him 12 reasons why I wasn't afraid, each one of them backing up why I was afraid. I wanted an easier, softer way. I wanted a co-author. I didn't want to do all the work.
yeah,
I didn't want to have to deal with deadlines. I didn't want to learn something new and have to spend more time on a computer or an iPad or a phone and type and journal. And he finally just said, "Your word in 23 was grow. Your word in 24 was mudita. What's your listen?" He goes, "You're right where you need to be to write a book. You have a story to share." So he really double dog dared me. And then he got me in front of a publisher that after three, a couple Zoom calls, Wiley said they wanted to publish a book and they wanted it to look like this. Would I be okay with that? And it was like a book on my life experiences. From a baseball perspective, the sayings that I have used over the years, we started with 50, we whittled it down to 25 hurdleisms. John was the first person that told me, he goes, "Clint, in 15 years, I've written down 20 hurdleisms that I still use today." And I go, "What? What do you call them?" He goes, "Hurdleisms." I go, "Come on, there's yogiisms, there's stingleisms, there's no hurdle." He goes, "Clint, you say some things that are pretty impactful. And I know you've used in a clubhouse. I know you've used, with presidents, with CEOs, with other people." He said, "You're going to find your rhythm with this." So we whittled the number down. We put it in the seasons of a baseball season, and we tied a life lesson, a personal and a professional lesson with each hurdlism.
no, that's so
I
awesome.
went to work 9 months, Joe, that it took me to write the book.
Good
The
for
book
you.
is going to launch, in February. The book will be available in bookstores, Books a Million, Barnes and Noble, can still be ordered on Amazon, Bookshop, and Indigo. Um, the pre-order has been incredibly encouraging. Um, I think I sent you, I don't know if I ever sent you sample chapters or not. I put sample chapters out on my email list. We've got over 8,300 people on the daily email list now. So
I'm
I've
one of
been
them.
pushing. Then you probably saw the Sunday where I sent out two sample chapters. I've been pushing the content on social media, which is another thing my son dared me to do because of the positivity. He goes, "You share,
Yeah,
Dad, you can reach so many more people." So this book, I feel really good that I've put my thoughts into something that's tangible, that's real. And I love the size. We chose a smaller book because they asked me books that changed my life. And I told them Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch
yeah.
Albom. And
Unbelievable book.
they go, "That's a small book." And I go, "Yeah, it's a small book." They go, "Did you like the small book?" I go, "I never had one. I love the small book." They go,
Yeah,
"We want your book to be a small book." And they're probably 20 years ago, old Clint, young Clint, I would have wanted a big book,
yeah,
the biggest book,
yeah, yeah.
an encyclopedia book.
Right.
And I thought, it's my first book. This is the perfect size. It's 144 pages. It's 20,000 words. I just had my boss, Billy Schmidt with the Rockies, said I read it on the plane.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
loved it.
yeah.
So the book is out. Uh, and my hope from the book is that anybody that picks it up will be able to pull a couple nuggets out of things that I failed at, how I figured out, how to bounce back, how to come back, the lessons I've learned just to become a better person, a better husband, a better friend, a better parent along the way.
You're
And
amazing.
the beautiful thing about my word from 2023, grow, is I'm still trying to find ways to grow.
Yeah, yeah. Look, my dad was a baseball coach for 30 something years as well. And he used to say, love baseball because it's the only game that doesn't have a clock to stop it. And I say the same thing about learning, growing, and progressing. There's no clock that stops it. My dad's 90 now, he's had Parkinson's for 17 years. He taught history, was a baseball coach, and still reads history books and baseball books. And he's 90.
Fantastic.
just wants to keep learning, just wants to keep growing, keeps expanding. Clint, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about our friend Kyle Blakeman. Um, I know we're out of time, but can you just go over that story? I'll give a preface for it. We had a player in our program, Kyle Blakeman, who got a rare form of cancer and was amazing at how he fought it and how he helped others with his fight by trying new techniques to try to beat it and all that, that he gave the doctors way to study it and those things, which was amazing to me. But you did something. You visited him in the hospital. And when you visited him in the hospital, you guys weren't doing too well. This is in 2007. Why don't you pick it up from there?
Well, I'd like to set the preface though. I reached out to Kyle because somebody else loved Kyle enough that met me at the supermarket
Yeah, at the grocery store. Yeah.
and asked if I would make a phone call to a young man that was battling cancer in a baseball.
Yeah.
I didn't know the woman. She didn't know me, but she found a way to come up and just ask. And I thought, if nothing else, if this woman has the heart for him, he deserves a phone call. Well, you call Kyle one time, you're done. We talked, we chatted. He had gone through the cancer then. He actually had beaten it. The cancer was in remission. He started playing ball again.
Yeah, he did.
And then we got to the hard spot where the cancer came back. He's in the hospital. I get a call from his mom. She says, Clint, we've been in touch. This is probably a year and a half where we were making regular phone calls. And I'd see him from time to time, but she goes, it's not good. She told me, she goes, I don't know how much longer he has. I know you're home for a few days. If you'd find a time to get by the hospital, try and cheer him up, it'd be great. Well, we're playing bad. And I said, no problem. I'll be there after the game. Another game, we kick a loss. I probably make 3 bad decisions. The last thing I want to do is go to a hospital.
Yeah.
I gave my word. I'm going to the hospital. I see Kyle. I see the parents, and I can see them in the back going, just so Kyle, how you doing? He goes, Clay, I'm not doing too good. He goes, it's been hard right now. I go, buddy, I can't even imagine. He goes, yeah, I was playing ball and everything was going good, and now I'm back in here, and I'll get it. We'll figure it out. I'll be okay, but it's just pretty hard right now. He goes, you guys aren't playing very well. I go, Kyle, we're not actually. We kind of stink right now. And he goes, well, you're the manager. What can you do? I says, well, I am the manager. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go visit my buddy in the hospital. I'm going to ask him to give me a lucky number, and I'm going to start writing it on the lineup. I don't know where this came. It came from God.
Yeah.
And he looks at me, he goes, lucky number. He goes, Clint, look at me. I'm in the hospital. I have a lucky number. I go, God, give me a number that you loved wearing. I need something from you, our bond, something from you that I'm going to go put on the lineup card. I'm going to circle it. I'm not going to tell anybody what it means or why I'm doing it. So he looks at me and he looks down, he looks around, his mom, his dad, daughter Macy's there. It's Macy, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And what a night when we had her come out and throw out the first pitch.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. I mean, it's part of this story.
It's part of this. He goes, Clint, I got a number. And I'm thinking, okay, 7, 12. He goes, 64. I go, what? 64? I go, that's not a baseball number. He goes, Clint. He goes, it was my football number. I loved playing football. He goes, I wasn't real good at it, but I was big, and I just loved 64. That's my number. Got it. I'm going to take the number. The next day we go to the park. We're playing the Nationals. We do the lineup card. I write 64 and circle it. And my bench coach, Jamie Court, goes, what's the number for? I go, hopefully a later story. We're losing 4-0 in the ninth inning. It might as well be 12-0. It's one of those games that you're only 4 runs down, but you feel like you're so far behind, there's no way you win. Well, I don't know, a walk, a hit, an error, a hit, a walk, an error. We win the game. We walk them off in the blink of an eye, and we win the game. I mean, we win a game we had no business winning. If we had those odds back then of losing the game, it would have been 99% in favor of the Nationals to win that game when that inning started.
Yeah.
We win the game. Well, what am I going to do? I grab the lineup card. I'm going back to the hospital because I actually told her, as long as I'm here, I'll probably drop by every night on the way home. Just, I don't know how many days he's got. So I walk in the room. He's going, "Oh my God, we just watched the game." He goes, "That was nuts." He goes, "How'd you win that game?" I flipped the lineup card around. He saw 64 circle. I said, "Dude, that's how I don't know. That's the only explanation I got."
Yeah.
He says, "So are you going to do it again tomorrow?" I said, "Yes, I'm doing it again tomorrow." We ripped off 13 out of 14 wins. I didn't take the number off after we lost the first game of the last series of the weekend to the Diamondbacks. Kept it on. We win 13 to 14, kept it on. We roll up the Phillies, we roll up the Diamondbacks. We win 21 out of 22 games with that number 64 circled on a lineup card.
And I think, Clint, I think his baseball number that he liked was 21. I
Who would have
think.
figured?
I think.
Now, here's the crazier thing, couple sidebars. Because what you're going to be able to do is this time we spent today, you're going to use this in 2 episodes because we've got enough content.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll tease them with the first one for the second one.
Yeah.
The night that we beat the Diamondbacks to go to the World Series, Macy threw out the first pitch.
With Kyle's sister. Wearing your jersey.
Wearing my jersey,
I
threw a
was there.
strike. Franklin Morales is our pitcher. I take him out at 64 pitches.
Yeah.
The game's final score 6-4.
And I think you scored all 6 runs in the fourth inning. Is that right?
In the fourth inning, we scored all 6 runs in the fourth inning. I get goosebumps telling the story.
I got goosebumps right now.
Kisla wrote an article about that game that people could probably go back and dig up because he asked about it. You know, some people ended up finding out about it.
Yeah.
But to this day, it's one of the most amazing streaks that I've ever been a part of, but also to know that there was a kid involved watching us from afar.
Mm-hmm.
There was no coincidence. I call them God winks. There was God winks all over that thing from start to finish.
Yeah, and the legacy Kyle left all of us was that toughness, that willingness to try new treatments that doctors and stuff got to study and see if those treatments worked. And he was willing to do that, not only for himself, but for other people that had his type of cancer. Amazing kid, amazing family, an amazing story. But, you know, it comes from your heart too, Clint, that you took the time as a major league manager to go see him, to do that out of the service of others is so important to you, which leads to my last 3 questions, and they're quick. I wrote a book called The 3 Ps, Find Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion. And I ask everyone that. What's your purpose in life?
To leave it better than when I found it.
Okay.
I mean, just to help along the way. I mean, that's basically I'm just trying to be a helper. When I was in Pittsburgh, I learned a lot of lessons from Mr. Rogers. Got to meet Mr. Rogers' wife because he'd already passed. But he said, watch when something bad happens. The helpers show up.
Yeah.
You know, we call them first responders in some aspects now, but just to be a helper.
Yeah.
That's my purpose.
What about your passion? What are you passionate about?
To see other people enjoy life.
Yeah.
Passionate about it. To watch teams jump up and down on the field, to watch players work through adversity, to watch families come together that maybe weren't all together. I have got a relationship with my daughter Ashley now that only God could have made, from where it was when her mother and I divorced to where we are now. It's truly to see the joy. It's mudita. It's to just share in the joy of other people that are in my life.
And I always say that purpose and passion kind of support each other. They help each other. They build off each other. And we have so many things in our life that come at us every day trying to take us out of our purpose and passion on a daily basis. And the monks have a saying that you protect your purpose, so your purpose protects you. And I think what holds your purpose and passion together is your perspective on life. When those things do come at you that are trying to get you, what's your perspective that kind of holds this all together?
Well, thank God I haven't gotten what I deserved. I'm a sinner saved by grace. I'm a recovering alcoholic. There's been so many people that were in my path when I was struggling that I paid no attention to, that I'm just trying to be somebody in somebody else's path that maybe not pay attention, but I'm going to be there. And I say this for many that will ask, I said, I really believe we're prepared for our future through our past if we paid attention. For so many years, Joe, I didn't pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Wow.
now I pay attention much better than I did when I was younger.
You're amazing. I have nothing but gratitude that I got to spend this almost an hour and a half, Clint. I've never gone that far, but I think you and I could keep going. But thank you. Thank you so much for inspiring people today to help people get through their adversity, get through their roadblocks, and understand that you can do that. That we've all got roadblocks and adversity that we have, whether it's sports, whether it's business, whether it's family, whether it's everyday life, and you can get through it. You can build from it, and you can grow from it and get better from it. Thank you so much for today.
You're welcome. And this is to give somebody else hope because there's somebody out there that's going
Yeah,
through what I've been through.
yeah,
There was a time in my life I knew more judges' names than I knew friends' names.
yeah,
I mean, truthfully,
yeah.
I was, I had nothing. And I'd created my own obstacle course.
You're
And
amazing.
you're never too far gone to not matter or not count or to not have better in front of you. You're not less than, you're not more than, but you're worthy.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for listening. What a powerful episode of the People Progressing podcast today. And having Clint Hurdle on, I knew it was going to be special, and it exceeded my expectations to the max. And like I always tell you all, please, please, please keep progressing in your life, keep getting better, keep learning and growing and progressing. And thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.